Hey guys, tonight we re-stepping into the drafty stone halls of a medieval castle where the beds are made of hay, the work never ends, and your boss thinks yelling is a personality trait. You're not a knight or a lady or even a cool bard with a lute. Nope, you're a servant. And not even a well-fed one. You sleep on a floor that's somehow colder than the air around it. You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising. Your job? Cleaning, fetching, carrying, nodding politely at people who forget your name but still expect you to spoon-feed their dog. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine travels. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll over on your lumpy sack of hay, trying to pretend it's not soaked through again. The walls around you breathe out a steady chill, like the whole castle is exhaling ice. You've got about 5 minutes to get moving before the steward starts bellowing. And you really don't want that kind of drama before breakfast, especially since you're not getting breakfast. You slip your feet into damp shoes that haven't dried out in weeks. Someone steps over you, muttering about the fire going out again. You think about going back to sleep for just one more minute. Then remember the bucket of chamber pots waiting for you upstairs. You shuffle down the hallway in the dark. Your back already aches, and you haven't even lifted anything yet. Other servants pass you, all of them looking like medieval zombies. Silent, hunched, deep. Someone's hauling firewood. Someone else is holding a candle stub like it's their only source of joy. You've got latrine duty this morning, and by latrine, we mean fancy, medieval toilet, specifically the pot underneath them. Welcome to the magical world of noble waste management. You collect the pots. You try not to look inside. You try even harder not to breathe through your nose. The castle may be fancy up top, but down here, it's just a medieval sewer. You dump the contents outside in a pit near the wall, dodging the mud and praying nothing. There's a shovel somewhere nearby, but you lost track of it to frostbites ago. Back inside, your next job is setting the steward's breakfast tray. He gets half a loaf of soft bread, a slice of cheese, and a watered-down cup of wine. You get nothing. Later, maybe someone will toss you a stale crust if you don't mess anything up. One of the younger boys spills a water jug. It crashes loud enough to wake the dead. You both freeze. You grab a rag. He grabs a bucket. You clean it up in dead silence, praying no one walks by. Last week, someone spilled soup and got locked in the cold room as a lesson. You pass the kitchen and catch a whiff of something frying. Your stomach growls. But no, that's not for you. That's for Lady Cecily's pet falcon. Yeah, the bird eats better than you do. You scrub the hallway steps next. They're slick with yesterday's mud and grease from someone's boots. You know these steps are just going to get trashed again in a few hours when the hunting party returns. But you do it anyway, because if you don't, you'll get a lecture, or worse, a shift in the freezing laundry pit. There's a thudding sound from the training yard. The young lord is out there swinging a sword like it owes him money. He's not good, but everyone claps anyway. You fake a smile and keep scrubbing. That's the job. You think about food again. Maybe a hot bowl of stew with herbs and meat and real bread. Not the chalky flat stuff you gnawed on last week. Real food feels like a myth at this point. A bedtime story told by hungrier servants. The sun's just barely starting to rise. Light trickles through the high-stained glass like it's on a timer. You pause for a second to look at it. It is actually kind of beautiful if your fingers were in tea, frozen, and your stomach was in tea, trying to digest itself. You head to the storage room for more firewood, wondering, not for the first time, how you ended up here. Were you born into this? Sold by a broke family? Or maybe you thought life in a castle would be glamorous. Spoiler, it's not. It's work. And it never ends. You hear your name being yelled across the hall. Guess break time's over. Not that you ever had one. You're back in the kitchen now. Eyes half open. Hands already going through the motions. Slicing stale bread. wiping crumbs, smelling food you won't get to eat. The hearth crackles behind you, but it doesn't help. You are too far away from the fire to feel anything but resentment. The good stuffed meat pies, roasted duck, garlic-smeared venison goes straight to the high table. You'll be lucky if there's a cold carrot left behind. That's castle life for you. You spend your day serving other people, then chew your own tongue to trick your body into thinking it's eating. You carry a wooden platter through the narrow side passage, low ceiling. Always smells like wet straw and old onions, and emerge into the great hall, where it's already echoing with noble voices. They don't notice you. You're supposed to be invisible. You could literally be on fire and someone would only complain about the smoke. The morning meal's already laid out. Thick bread, glazed fruit, hard-boiled eggs, salted fish, spiced wine. You try not to look directly at the honeyed figs. One time, someone did, and the steward accused him of lusting after noble property. That guy ended up cleaning privies for a month with a toothbrush. Not a real one, just a stick. You place the tray at the edge of the long table, where Lord Almeric sits like he owns time itself. Which, to be fair, he kinda does in here. He yawns, waves his hand, and a roasted pheasant appears in front of him. Magic. Nope. Just you and 3 other exhausted servants, hiding behind a curtain, ready to rush out with hot meat like it's a Broadway cue. Your hands shake a little, not from fear, just from the effort of not stealing a bite. You tell yourself it's not worth it, not this early in the day. The kitchen has eyes and ears and a sharp memory. You back away from the table, slow and steady, like a magician disappearing behind a curtain. One wrong move and you're the entertainment. One time, a boy dropped a trencher and Lady Cecily laughed so hard she nearly choked. Then she made him serve the next course on his knees. Everyone thought it was hilarious, except him. You head back to the kitchen to wash the dishes that didn't even dirty. Noble dining means trays get replaced every course, even if no one touched the food. Why? Because it looks better. Because peasants like you have hands, and nobles like them have opinions. You start scrubbing with a damp cloth and ash soap. It smells like expired vinegar. Your hands are cracked, your fingernails stained. The kitchen maid next to you, Greta, hums some off-key folk tune. You hum along, not because you like it, but because it's better than silence. Halfway through, you pause and stare at the leg of lamb someone left untouched, just sitting there, cooling, perfectly roasted. You reach toward it, slow, careful, then stop. You hear a soft cough. Someone's watching, probably the steward, probably through the wall. That man appears like a ghost whenever temptation strikes. Historians still argue whether medieval servants stole food as much as the old ballads say you don't care. You're living the story, and no, you're not risking your job or your fingers for a piece of meat. Later in the day, you carry leftovers, leftovers to the hounds. That's right, Lord Almeric's hunting dogs get more meat than you do. They growl at you, but not out of hunger, just because they can. They're nobles too. In a way, you drop a bone in the trough, and one dog growls low. You lock eyes with it. It blinks first. Small wins. Back inside, someone spills a bowl of broth on the floor. You mop it up, using what used to be your only clean rag. You're too tired to be mad. You wipe, rinse, and move on. Your lunch break, such as it is, comes in the form of sitting on a cold bench in the storage room and gnawing on a piece of dried turnip, not even salted. You chew slowly, pretending it's bread. Then you pretend it's pie. Then you pretend it's not happening. One of the older servants tells a story about a noble feast gone wrong. How a roast boar exploded from being stuffed with too many apples. You all laugh too hard, mostly because if you don't laugh, you might scream. The steward walks in. Everyone shuts up instantly. He smells like wet wool and boiled cabbage. He gives a look. You know the look. It means someone's getting extra chores. Guess who? You're sent back to the kitchen for firewood. Again, the stack's all the way in the courtyard, which is cold and wet and smells like horse. You load up your arms and trudge back, logs digging into your ribs. You lose one halfway in and have to chase it across the flagstones. Someone laughs. Not with you. Back in the kitchen, a fresh load of meat arrives for tonight's dinner. Giant haunches, hanging on iron hooks, dripping slowly onto the stone floor. It's a gruesome display of wealth. You help unload them, and as you do, something drips on your boot. You hope it's water. It isn't. Later, you polish silverware for the evening meal. Forks, knives, goblets. You catch your reflection in one of them. You look like someone who used to dream about Adventureland, now dreams about soup. Dinner prep continues around you like a low-level thunderstorm. Pans clang, oil sizzles, people yell. It's chaos. And you're just a little background noise, a servant in a nobleman's castle, helping make a feast you'll never taste. You're halfway through the day, but it feels like you've lived a week. Your back hurts, your stomach's still empty, and your hands look like they've been sandpapered by time. Now it is time for one of the most glamorous jobs in the entire castle. Noble bathroom duty. Let's talk about the garderobe. That S, the medieval word for what we now call a glorified hole in a wall. There's no privacy. There's no flushing. There's no privacy. There's just a long, stony drop from a wooden bench to wherever the waste ends up, usually some pit behind the castle. Guess whose job it is to make sure that pit doesn't overflow? Yep, yours. You grab your shovel, your bucket, and your regrets and start the long, slow walk to the outer corridor where the Lord's garderobe is located. It's chilly, damp, and smells like every bad decision that's ever been made. The worst part, there's a tiny window next to it with a beautiful view of the valley. So every time you're elbows deep in muck, nature's just outside mocking you with its beauty. You crouch, scrape, dump, repeat. It's a rhythm now, a sad, stinky rhythm. You try to breathe through your mouth, but then you remember why that's a terrible idea. You gag, pause, and keep going. Someone once told you that nobles used to toss lavender or rosemary down these holes to cover the smell. You're still waiting for that miracle. All you get is damp stone, warm, stench, and the occasional very confused rat. Historians still argue whether castle guard herbs were cleaned daily or just when things got bad. Based on the current state of things, you'd vote for never. The pile below looks like it's been collecting secrets for centuries. You finish up and head to the kitchen for a quick rinse by. We mean a splash of cold water in a bucket that might be been used for soup yesterday. You wipe your hands on your tunic. No one notices. No one ever does. Just as you think you might get a break, a maid rushes in, panting. The lady's sick. She huffs. She needs her chamber pot changed. Again, you don't ask what happened. You just grab the clean pot, the herbs, the claws, and trudge upstairs. Lady Cecily's room is the size of 3 kitchens stacked together, and it always smells like rosewater and burned hair. She's lying on a chaise lounge, dramatically pale, one hand draped across her forehead like she's auditioning for a tragic opera. "I believe I'm dying," she whispers. She's not. She ate too many sugared almonds again. You smile, bow, and nod through her instructions. Heat the stones under the bed. Air out the curtains. Fetch her a slice of honey cake. Then remove the offending chamber pot and take it to the disposal pit. Again, you do it all without saying a word. Because if you say anything, it might be taken the wrong way. And servants who sass the lady, they disappear. Or worse, they end up as foot warmers for the steward's cat. You walk past the courtyard, holding the pot like it's made of gold. People glance at you, not with pity, just mild disgust. One guard chuckles. "Noble work, that is," he says. You don't respond, mostly because he's got a sword and you've got a bucket of pee. You make it to the pit, dump it carefully, and try not to think about the splash zone. There's an old superstition among the staff that the smell lingers in your soul. You used to laugh at it. You're not laughing anymore. Back inside, the steward catches your eye and waves you over. That's never good. "We're short on linen runners for the guest table." He says, "Go find the clean ones." Clean ones? You didn't even know there were clean ones. But you nod anyway and head to the linen closet, which is more of a damp cavern stacked with folded regrets. You sort through piles of stiff, yellowing cloth until your arms are covered in dust and your nose won't stop itching. You finally find 3 semi-clean runners and rush them upstairs. A noble from another castle has just arrived, and his outfit alone probably costs more than your yearly ration allowance. He sniffs the air. "Smells like turnips," he says. "It's you. You smell like turnips. And maybe a little bit of You back out of the room, fast. Back in the hallway. You lean against the wall, just for a second, and exhale. The day isn't over, and you're already daydreaming about lying down on your patch of straw and pretending to sleep. Then someone yells from the kitchens, "More firewood." You sigh. Of course, you head to the woodshed. Again, you load up your arms. Again, you tell yourself this isn't forever. That maybe, just maybe, if you keep your head down and your mouth shut, you'll earn your way into a better job. Or assistant torchlighter. Or anything that doesn't involve poop. But deep down, you're better. You return to the garderobe corridor to double-check the bucket's been replaced. It has. The rat is still there. You nod at it. You've named it Gerald. Gerald doesn't judge. Just another day in paradise. You're dragging a fresh bundle of firewood through the lower hall, arms burning, fingers numb, and your left boot slowly falling apart at the sole. Your reward for not collapsing. Lighting duties. That's right. It is your job to make sure the noble folk can see in the dark without ever thinking about how the lights get lit. The castle's halls are long, cold, and filled with little alcoves for torches and candles. There's no such thing as just flip the switch. Nope. It's flint, tinder, wax, and patience. Lots of patience. And if you accidentally let a torch burn out overnight, that's your fault. Even if it's 3 floors up and someone else passed it last. You start with the high corridor outside the chapel. The floor here is smooth stone, slick with condensation. And of course, the sconces are 7 feet off the ground. You drag over the rickety ladder, one splinter at a time, muttering under your breath. Climb, balance, strike flint shield from the draft, light candle, repeat. The ladder creaks every time you shift your weight, and the flame always tries to dodge your efforts. You swear the wax itself is mocking you. It doesn't want to melt. It just wants to look pretty. You move on to the north hallway. It's darker there, and someone spilled stew recently, so now the floor is sticky and slippery. Somehow, you try not to think about it. Just keep moving. Next alcove, next candle. You've got maybe 24 more to go. The funny part, you don't even get to see the benefit of your work. Once you light a hallway, you're off to the next one. By the time you come back, some lordling has probably extinguished a torch for ambience. And now you read the one who gets yelled at. For dim corridors, you head toward the main staircase, your arms trembling from holding the lighting pole. It is basically a glorified stick with an oily rag at the end. What passes for tech when you read a century or two before electricity? The ceiling arches above you like the ribcage of a sleeping dragon, and each alcove casts shadows that could hide a thief, or worse, the steward. As you step onto the second stair, your foot slides. You flail, grab the railing, and just barely save yourself from face-planting in front of a group of giggling maids. Great. There's going to be a story by dinner. You okay? One of them asks, not quite hiding her smile. Never better, you mutter, grabbing the ladder again. You light the torches by the great hall doors, where the tapestries flap gently from the draft. Someone asked once why the castle is always cold, even with fires going 24/7. Historians still argue whether it was bad insulation, strategic architecture, or just plain sadism. You're going with sadism. You make your way toward the sleeping chambers. These are fancier. The sconces here are made of brass, polished daily by some other poor soul with aching wrists. The candles are beeswax, not tallow, which means they actually smell kinda nice. For a second, you imagine having one by your bedside, glowing warm against the stone wall as you sip something hot and sweet. Then you bump into a page boy sprinting past and nearly drop the flame right onto the rug. He yells, you curse under your breath, and somehow it's your fault. Naturally, you're supposed to watch where you're going. He barks. You don't reply, because you've learned. Words get you in trouble. Silence gets you invisible. And invisible gets you through the day. In the corridor, near the armory, one torch refuses to light. No matter how you strike the flint, the wick just won't catch. You whisper a few quiet insults at it. Doesn't help. A breeze rushes through the hallways. Open the window and your last lit torch sputters and goes out. You stare at it for a long, bitter second. There's an unspoken law in the castle. Torches out, trouble in. You relight everything. Again, you're getting good at this. Or maybe numb. You finally reach the southern wing, the noble chambers. These corridors aren't just warmer, they're cleaner. Somehow, like dirt's afraid to show up here. You light the candles without being noticed, which is ideal. The fewer people see you, the fewer people have opinions about how you do your job. A door creaks open. Lady Cecily pokes her head out. You there, Candle Boy, she says, even though you're not a boy and your name's not Candle. Yes, my lady. She squints at the sconces. Too bright. Blow out every other one. I prefer a softer glow in the evenings. Of course she does. You nod and get to work undoing the last 10 minutes of effort. She disappears back inside with a bored sigh. You imagine what her room looks like. Plush chairs, warm furs, a tray of sugared almonds she'll never finish. You sigh too. As the day fades into evening, you make one final round. Some of the lower candles have already burned out and need replacing. You do it without thinking. Your body moves while your mind floats, maybe off to a little house in the woods, a warm fire, a loaf of bread. That's all yours. But you snap back to reality when the night barrels past and shouts for more light in the courtyard. Of course, there's always one more candle, always one more place to brighten. The irony isn't lost on you. You bring light to everyone else's life, but never get to sit and enjoy it yourself. You carry your lighting bowl back to the storage closet. Your arms ache, your eyes sting. The wax has clung to your fingers like glue. You tell yourself it's fine. Tomorrow will be easier. It won't. You're up before the sun. Again, your eyes are still half glued shut from sleep. You barely got. Your knees pop as you swing your legs off the straw-stuffed mattress, and your whole body reminds you that you not a noble. Furniture with a pulse. Because today, you've got privy duty. Yep, the chamber pots. You drag your bucket, mop, and rag cart down the narrow servant's passage that always smells like old bread and damp stone. The castle is already creaking to lifeboots on stairs, pots clanking in kitchens, someone arguing over breakfast oats. But you're not heading toward food. You're heading toward filth. Your first stop, the East Tower, home to Lord Edwin and Lady Rosamond, who apparently drink enough wine to fill a moat. Their chamber pots are always overflowing, always sloshing, always the color of nightmares. You knock gently. You're not allowed to just barge in, but you're also not allowed to take too long. A grunted enter gives you the pot sits on a little carved stool near the bed. You try not to look at it, but your brain is like, let's calculate the viscosity. Why? Brain. You hold your breath, carry it out with practiced arms, and dump it down the garderobe. Shoot. It's a vertical shaft, stone-lined, open air. And yes, it smells exactly like you think. It's basically a medieval poop slide, straight down to a ditch below the castle. No, you don't want to know where that ditch goes. You already stepped in it once. Never again. The scholarly debate of the day. Some historians argue whether medieval castles had sophisticated waste systems. A few say yes, see labret drainage, compost pits, lime disinfectants. Others say, nah, They just winged it and hoped for the best. After carrying 20 chamber pots up and down stairs, you're solidly in Team Wing It. Next stop, the guest quarters. That's 3 extra chamber pots. One of them belongs to a merchant from Flanders who had way too much lamb stew last night. You learn a lot about people from their chamber pots, and none of it is charming. You gag a little on the way down the servant stairs. The air is thick and sour, and your mop sloshes loudly in its bucket, like it's judging you. Then it's off to the nursery. Kids. Sticky, fidgety, loud kids who have absolutely no shame in yelling, "She stinks!" while you pass by. You want to point out that it's them who filled the pot. But alas, sure, the invisible one. You're the stink ghost. One of the nannies gives you a sympathetic look. "It'll get better," she says. You don't believe her. Then comes the real horror. The Great Hall. This isn't about chamber pots anymore. No, this is about scrubbing wooden benches, where squires got sick after too much ale, or where someone spilled an entire meat pie and then stepped on it. There's grease on the tapestries. There's stew on the flagstones. There's something unidentifiable in a goblet. You get on your knees and scrub until the brush handle blisters your hand. The water goes gray fast, then black, then it disappears under more grime. It's not even You drag yourself down the corridor to the servant washroom to dump your mop bucket. You pause by the wall and press your forehead to the cool stone. It's your only comfort today. That and a tiny crumb of bread tucked in your pocket for lunch. Someone passes behind you, probably a steward or a kitchen boy, muttering, "Poor soul, got latrine duty again." You don't respond. You're scrubbing the hall outside the steward's office now, trying not to make eye contact. The steward has that look eye, where you re never sure if he is planning to give you a new task or just insult your posture. He doesn't speak, just glances. You feel judged all the same. By noon, you've dumped out over 24 chamber pots. Your boots are splattered. Your back screams. You sit by the wall and eat your crumb of bread. It tastes like sawdust and quiet defeat. You once heard a fringe tidbit from an older servant some castle servants in Italy wore lavender sachets under their noses during waist duty. You asked if we could have those here. They laughed. The afternoon brings a fresh joy. Someone clogged the garderobe chute. Again, you get the pole. It is a long iron rod that exists for one purpose, and one purpose only: unclogging the medieval poop slide. You hold your breath and jab. Something shifts. The smell punches you in the soul, and somewhere down below, there's a faint splash. Mission accomplished. But you're not done. The chambermaid from the north wing waves you over. Apparently, the countess had a stomach upset and didn't quite make it to the pot. You nod, of course. Of course she didn't. You mop, you scrub, you try not to cry. And when you're finally finished, the sun has started to dip low, and you feel like a wrung-out rag yourself. You wash your hands in the freezing basin water, then dump the mop bucket one final time. The smell clings to you like a cursed cloak. You head to the bunk room, half dead, half dreaming of clean air and a life where toilets flush. But even as you collapse onto your hay mattress, one final thought clings to your brain. Tomorrow is laundry day, and you just know someone's sheets are going to be awful. You wake up to a rat, not metaphorically a literal rat, staring at you from the corner of your straw mattress like it owns the place. And honestly, it kinda does. You blink slowly, wondering if you're still dreaming, until it scurries off and disappears into a crack in the stone wall. Lovely. Just another reminder that you're not at the top of the food chain here. You're under it. Today's assignment: laundry. Now, you might be picturing a nice little wash basin, some gentle scrubbing, maybe a sunny field with clothes hanging on lines. No, you make your way down the steps to the castle's lower courtyard, where a long line of wash tubs sit near a muddy stream that's pretending to be helpful. A couple other servants are already there, sleeves rolled up, arms deep in gray, soapy water that smells vaguely like old bacon and sheep's wool. The first load, bed linens. Specifically, the noble family's bed linens. And those things are massive. You and another servant named Tilda have to team up just to drag one down to the tub. It's stained with wine, sweat, something suspiciously yellow, and oh good, feathers that have escaped from the pillow. Not actual birds. You hope. You plunge the sheet into the water. It's cold. It's always cold. Your knuckles go red instantly, and the fabric weighs approximately 100 wet anvils. You scrub anyway. You don't have a choice. One of the most debated topics among historians is how medieval people actually washed their clothes. Some say they boiled everything with ash and lye. Others argue that many fabrics were simply aired out and beaten with paddles, not washed. In your case, it's a combo of harsh soap, cold, stream water, and prayers. Lots of prayers. By the time you finish the first sheet, you feel like your spine has been removed and replaced with jelly. But you keep going. There are at least 5 more to do, plus towels, undergarments, tablecloths, and one mysterious tapestry that smells like old fish. And then there's the worst part. The noble underclothes are made of fine linen, sure, but they are not immune to the disasters of digestion. Lady Rosamond Essex comes wrapped in a handkerchief with a little note from her maid. Please be gentle, these are delicate. You wish you were delicate. You wish any part of this was delicate. But you're elbow deep in the suds again, scrubbing stains that should never be named. The castle cook walks by and says, "Got the royal bloomers," and laughs like it's the funniest thing in the world. You do not laugh. Once the washing's done, it is time to haul the wet laundry to the drying area patch of muddy grass just outside the walls. You pin each piece carefully onto the rope line strung between wooden poles, praying that it doesn't rain. Because if it rains, you have to do it all again. You spot Tilda struggling with a blanket twice her size and go to help. She sighs and mutters, "At least when we're scrubbing, we're warm." She's not wrong. The wind cuts through your soaked sleeves and raises goosebumps all over. Then comes ironing. No fancy devices here. Just a metal plate heated over a fire. And a lot of guesswork. You smooth out each linen piece on a wooden plank and press carefully. Too hot and it scorches. Too cold and it does nothing. You burn 3 fingers in a pillowcase before you find the sweet spot. A fringe tidbit. In some places, servants use smooth stones or even heated bricks wrapped in cloth to press fabric. You try that once. It leaves a brick imprint. Not ideal. While you work, one of the young pages comes by with an urgent request from the Lady S-maid. Apparently, Lady Rosamond spilled perfume on her best robe and needs it freshened before dinner. You want to ask why you have to handle it when you've already been washing the equivalent of a medieval hotel's worth of linens. But you bite your tongue. The robe smells like roses, which is a nice change. But it's also covered in sequins and beads that snag on everything. You rinse it gently, like it's made of spider webs, then dab it dry with linen towels. It takes forever. By the time you're done, your knees ache, your fingers are raw, and your stomach is begging for something more than the crust of bread you stuffed in your pocket this morning. Late afternoon, clouds roll in. You and the others rush to pull the drying laundry off the lines. It's a mad dash linens, flying towels whipping in the wind. Someone trips and lands in the mud. You barely get everything inside before the rain starts. But now the laundry room smells like wet dog and castle socks. You hang what you can by the fire and hope they'll dry overnight. Hope is a big part of being a servant. As the sky darkens, you finally wash your hands in the same freezing bucket. You've been rinsing cloth and all day. The soap stings your cuts. Your arms feel like they're made of pudding. Back in your bunk, Tilda flops down beside you and whispers, "We miss stew tonight. Hope you like dry crust again." You laugh, just once. It hurts your face, but it's still a laugh. You close your eyes, and all you see is water, linens, and the eternal question, why do nobles need so many monogrammed napkins? Morning, again. Your spine clicks like a rusted hinge as you roll out of bed. It's raining. It rained all night, which means 2 things. The laundry from yesterday is still damp, and the castle smells like moldy wool and wet dog. Perfect. You drag yourself into the corridor, ducking under a sagging tapestry and narrowly avoiding a chamber pot. Someone thoughtfully left outside a noble S door. That's someone else's job today. Thank goodness yours. Chamber duty. No, not those chambers. If you're lucky, you've never heard of a If you're you know it intimately. It is the medieval version of a bathroom, a stone seat, built into the outer wall of the castle, with a hole that drops down into open air. You know what that means? You're on latrine maintenance today, and you really wish you weren't. The moment you open the wooden access hatch to the waste chute, the smell hits you like a punch to the lungs. It is a mix of everything terrible you've ever smelled, plus something unholy you didn't know existed. You gag. Of course you gag. Everyone gags. The trick is to do it quietly, so the steward doesn't think you're weak. Armed with a long stick and a bucket of vinegar-soaked rags, you begin the noble art of poking things until they fall. Occasionally, a breeze wafts up from the pit below, carrying with it the haunting scent of rich diets and poor, fun historical fact. Some castles built garderobes to empty directly into the moat. So not only were moats full of water, they were also full of medieval waste. You wouldn't want to fall in there. You wouldn't want to fall near there. You knock loose a particularly stubborn clump and hear a satisfying plop. Progress. You almost feel proud. Almost. The castle cook walks past, holding a basket of onions, and pinches his nose. Lovely morning for it, he says. Then laughs, like he hasn't told that joke 100 times already. You don't respond. Your eyes are watering. Once the chutes are clear, it's time for the ash dump. You grab a shovel and start hauling cold ashes from last night. As hearth fires to spread over the chamber floor. Helps with the smell. They say lies. Tilda passes by and mutters, "Bet Lady Rosamond doesn't scrub her own poo chute." You nod. You're too tired to respond. You haven't even had stale crust yet. Next task. Fireplace flues. Because apparently, when you do one kind of dirty job, everyone assumes you love them all. You crawl up a narrow staircase that leads to the upper. These are the fancy ones where nobles sip wine and gossip and never wonder who keeps the fire clean. It's always you. You kneel, reach in, and start scooping out soot, trying not to inhale too much. Your hands go black almost immediately, and little soot clouds puff around you with every movement. You sneeze once, then again, and knock your elbow against a stone edge. You'll have a bruise. Just added to the collection. A fringe detail. Some castles hired small boy sore. Even chimney-sweeping animals like geese or monkey stew help clean flues. You are neither a boy nor a goose, but here you are, halfway up a flue with a soot mustache. By noon, you look like a coal golem. The steward finally lets you rinse off at the barrel by the kitchen, which is technically for vegetables. But you don't care. It's cold. It stings. It's heaven. You manage to grab a hunk of yesterday's bread and half an onion for lunch gourmet. You overhear two knights arguing about whether the best way to break a siege is fire or famine. They don't ask your opinion. You're glad they'd probably just mock your answer. Scholars still debate whether medieval sanitation practices were willfully ignorant, or simply the best they could do with what they had. You have thoughts on the matter. Most of them involve vinegar and trauma. After lunch, you're sent to clean the Great Hall, which doesn't sound bad until you realize it's put. There's food everywhere. Bones under benches, fish heads on platters. Someone dropped an entire trencher of gravy near the high table and left it for gravity to deal with. Spoiler: gravity failed. You scrub, sweep, and dodge lazy dogs hoping to snatch up leftovers. One of them licks your hand. You don't stop them. It's the most affection you've received all week. At one point, you find a pair of noblemen's slippers under the dais. You sniff them. Mistake. Big mistake. You put them back like a cursed object and keep moving. Evening rolls in with a golden, mocking glow. The nobles are getting dressed for dinner. You're trying to rinse gravy from your only tunic with what little water you can find. The rain stopped. but the sky is still heavy. So are your eyelids. You trudge back to your quarters, feet squishing in your wet boots. Tilda's already curled up on her straw bed, hugging a turnip like it's a teddy bear. You laugh softly. She opens one eye. Got her open again. You nod. God help us, she mutters, and pulls her blanket up over her head. You lie back on your bunk, arms aching, back screaming, nose still tingling from the vinegar fumes, and wonder how much worse tomorrow can be. Spoiler worse, but for now, you close your eyes and fall asleep to the sweet scent of wet onions and ash. It's barely dawn when a sharp rap on the door jolts you awake. Up barks the steward. We need more hands in the scullery. You groan, peel your face off the straw mattress, and shuffle into your crusty tunic. Your back feels like it's been folded and stored in a barrel overnight. Your feet, still damp from yesterday, squish in your boots like old cabbage. Down in the scullery, the air is thick with steam and burnt fat. The fire's been going since before sunrise. The head cook shouts instructions like a battle commander. You're handed a basket of grimy pots and told, scrub until your fingers forget they exist. The water in the washing trough is somewhere between freezing stream and swamp runoff. You dip your hands in and hiss through your teeth. The grime clings to the pots like it has a mortgage and nowhere else to go. You scrub harder. Today is preservation day, which means barrels of fish, salted pork, and questionable vegetables are being hauled into the storerooms. You help carry them, straining under the weight. One sack of carrots spills, and the cook throws a ladle at your head. You dodge, barely. Quirky tidbit. In some noble houses, servants had to taste the food first to ensure it wasn't poisoned. You'd almost prefer that over lifting another barrel of pickled turnip. While you scrub a pan that looks like it fought in a war, you overhear a kitchen boy talking about a visiting noble who's arriving tonight, which means a banquet, which means extra cleaning, extra stress, extra yelling, and none of the meat ends up in your mouth, obviously. You're reassigned to the buttery, basically the medieval pantry for booze. It's cooler here, and slightly quieter, but also dark, and damp, and haunted by the clink of jugs and casks that all look exactly the same. Fetch 2 bottles or the Lord's Red, the steward says. You squint at the barrels. None are labeled. Which one's red? You ask. He blinks. Taste them. You blink back. What? He shrugs. Just don't drink too much. So now you're crouching beside wine barrels, dipping your finger in and tasting each one like some tragic sommelier from peasant hell. One is clearly vinegar. Another might be ale. One's suspiciously sweet. You choose the least offensive and hope for the best. The castle is buzzing with preparations. Linen is being ironed. Torches are being refueled. And some poor squire is trying to herd a flock of doves out of the main hall. You're sent to clean the guest room. The noble is important, which means everything must look perfect. The mattress is stuffed with straw and crawling with little black beetles. You smack at them with a broom until they scatter. Then fluff the bedding until it looks somewhat inviting. You sweep the floor, polish the tiny mirror, and replace the chamber pot. You pray he doesn't inspect too closely. Outside, a storm starts to brew again. Wind whistles through the cracks in the stone. The smell of roasting meat wafts down the corridor, and your stomach actually whimpers dinner time. For the nobles, anyway. You're allowed crusts. Once the feast ends, you hover near the edge of the great hall, eyes darting to dropped bits of food. A goose leg hits the floor. You swoop in like a hawk, only to be intercepted by the steward's cane. He nods toward the kitchen. You scuttle back, tail between your legs. Scholars still argue whether noble households genuinely cared about the dignity of their servants, or simply needed them alive enough to keep the soup hot. You have strong opinions, none of them printable. As night deepens, you're tasked with turning down the noble's bedding. Sounds simple until you realize the visiting lord brought his own bed bugs. The man refuses to sleep unless his mattress is properly seasoned. You pull back the sheet and gag. It's crunchy. You light a few candles, stoke the fire, and pray no one notices the damp spot on the floor where the ceiling leaks. Finally, you're dismissed. You stumble down the hall. "Did you see the noble's wife?" she whispers. You shake your head. She has got a dress so wide it took 3 maids just to walk her through the door. Bet she can't even sit down. You chuckle, and for a moment, your misery feels shared. That's something. You reach your chamber. It's cold, still damp, and smells vaguely of vinegar. But it's yours. Sort of. You collapse onto the straw. The wind howls outside. You wrap your thin blanket tighter, imagining it's wool, or fur, or anything warmer than a shivering suggestion of fabric. Somewhere in the castle, a noble's heart plays a sleepy melody. You listen for a moment. Then sleep swallows you whole. The smell hits you before you even open your eyes. Smoke, burnt meat, and something that might be rat droppings. You blink awake, still half in a dream, and realize that someone set a fire near the outer kitchen. You sit up, coughing, as shouting echoes down the hallway. Everyone outside, fire near the woodpile. You're not even fully dressed as you bolt into the courtyard, where chaos swirls like a bad stew. Servants run back and forth with buckets. Most of them have. You grab one and join the line, sloshing water onto a fire that's already dying down, but not before blackening the wall with soot and scorching the woodpile for winter fuel. And just like that, your morning is ruined. You're told to help clean the char, which means scrubbing stone with freezing water and a brush that's more stick than bristle. Your hands go numb almost immediately. Tilda's next to you, muttering curses in a language you don't recognize. Once the mess is mostly contained, you're sent to the laundry house, because apparently the fire wasn't punishment enough. The laundry house smells like boiling lye and wet wool. There's steam everywhere, and the floor is always slick. You're handed a bundle of linens, mostly bed sheets and noblemen's undergarments, and instructed to start the soak and beat cycle. Yes, beat, with a paddle, over a flat stone. Historical fact: in medieval castles, linens were sometimes bleached with stale urine. You're praying that's not the case today. The washwater is yellowish, and you really don't want to ask why. You swing the paddle half-heartedly, watching droplets fly. Your back aches. Your arms feel like soup. The laundry master walks by and grunts. Put more muscle into it. You'd like to put more muscle into his face. After laundry, it's chamber pot duty again. The noble's feast last night was ... robust. And now, your job is to deal with the aftermath. The stink is biblical. You carry the full pots carefully, trying not to. The dumping area is outside the castle walls, over a rickety wooden ledge. As you tip one of the pots, a gust of wind blows it back at you. You freeze. There's splashback. You cry a little, quietly. Dignity is a distant concept. By the time you're done, you look like a survivor of some bizarre medieval cooking accident. You wash off in the icy stream, teeth chattering. A goose honks at you. You consider honking back. Quirky tidbit. Castle geese were sometimes used as guard animals. They honked wildly at strangers and intruders. Also, they bite hard. You return inside just in time to help with floor rushes. Every few weeks, they change the rushes. Today's mixture includes lavender and mint-rare luxuries. You're told to scatter them gently, like snow. You drop a handful and sneeze violently. Keep it neat. Someone snaps. The rushes do not absorb sound, or cold, or smells, but the nobles love them, so you deal with it. The steward calls you over. You've been chosen for personal duty. Your blood runs cold. That usually means serving someone important ... closely. You're led to Lady Cecily's chamber. Her voice is soft, high, and terrifying. You help me dress. You fumble with a dozen layers chemise. She's not amused when you tug too hard. Have you never touched silk before? You mutter something about not being allowed near silk in your entire miserable life. Once dressed, she sits at the vanity, and you're told to brush her hair. You brush, and brush, and brush. Each stroke slow, careful. Her golden curls tangle like seaweed. She complains you're pulling. "I could have the dogs do this gentler," she says. You smile, dead inside. After she's satisfied, you clean up her chamber. It looks untouched, but nobles have a sixth sense for dust. You wipe every surface twice. She lounges on a couch, humming a tune, while you mop quietly. Scholars still argue whether noble women were truly powerless, or if they simply wielded a different, quieter kind of authority. From where you're standing, Cecily could have you fed to pigs if she wanted. Eventually, you're dismissed. Back in the hallway, you pass by the jester. He gives you a wink and tosses you a crust of bread. It's stale, but edible. You nod gratefully and take a bite, chewing like it's the feast of the century. Evening again. The castle settles into its nightly rhythm. You're asked to light the hallway torches, your hands shaking as you strike the flint. The flame catches. Shadows flicker. The walls seem to whisper. You walk slowly back to your quarters. Every joint in your body creaks. Your feet have blistered over yesterday's blisters. And the smell now, a pungent blend of smoke, chamber pots, and lavender rushes. You collapse onto your bedroll. No energy left to even remove your boots. The straw pokes your ribs. The wind outside howls like a dying animal. You can hear distant music from the upper hall. You wonder what it's like to sit at the high table, to eat without asking, to sleep without shivering. Maybe tomorrow, you'll ask the cook for an extra crust. Maybe tomorrow, the stew won't be mostly bones. But tonight, you sleep like a rock. Someone tripped over. You wake to the sound of bells, loud, irregular, and entirely too close to your ear. It's still dark out, which means it's probably around 4 in the morning. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your back is stiffened like a board. Your legs ache. Your hands are cracked. And your neck feels like someone tried to twist it off in your sleep. Welcome to another glorious day in the castle. You drag yourself up, swaying a little. The bells mean the visiting clergy have arrived, which means surprise. The castle now needs to look holier than the Pope's slippers, and that means you have work to do. They shove a pile of robes into your arms, musty church vestments that smell like dust and incense. You're told to air them out quickly before prayers begin. So you stand in a pre-dawn mist, shaking out linen like some kind of ghost wrangler. Historical fact: castles often had small chapels or prayer rooms for visiting clergy and noble families. While religion was important, the daily rituals were often carried out by exhausted servants like you. You get the robes, more or less wrinkle-free, and head to the chapel. It's cold inside, stone biting through your shoes. Candles flicker. A monk nods at you, silent. You try not to cough from the incense cloud hanging in the air like smoke from a badly tended fire. Then it's on to meal prep again. The kitchen's already buzzing, boiling pots, snapping fires, and the thick, choking smell of boiled root vegetables. You're handed a parsnip and a dull knife. Your mission J-U-S-T peel. And don't cut yourself. Again. The cook watches you like a hawk, snapping when you get too slow or miss a spot. You're halfway through the pile when a high-pitched shriek cuts through the noise. Someone's dropped a tray of eggs, dozens of them splattered across the floor like the world's worst omelet. You're volunteered to clean it. You kneel in the muck, scooping runny yolks into a wooden bucket, fighting the urge to gag. A rat scurries by and you pretend not to see it. Just another castle resident. Quirky tidbit: rats were so common in medieval kitchens that some cooks trained cats to stay nearby during meal prep but not touch the food. You really wish your castle had cats. Or better yet, less rats. You scrub the egg mess away and wash your hands in a barrel of gray water. Then you're off to help prepare the dining hall. Polish the goblets, wipe the platters, arrange the trenches of flat stale bread plates that soak up grease and get tossed to the poor afterward. By the time the nobles arrive, everything sparkles, or at least doesn't smell like old boots. You hide in the corner, ready to jump at the steward's slightest nod. Refill wine, replace fallen forks, clear away bone. You're a shadow with a tray. Someone drops a spoon. You bend to pick it up, bump your head on the table, and knock over a pitcher of ale. The steward glares at you like you've just insulted the Queen's mother. You're on floor rushes for the rest of the week. You want to scream. Instead, you nod. After the meal, it's time to help clean the privies again. There's a leak in one of the chute buckets. You find out the hard way. You start fantasizing about being a wandering bard, or a highway robber, or a tree, anything but this. Eventually, you're called to help with the stables. A nobleman's horse needs brushing, feeding, and the always glamorous hoof scraping. You walk into the stables and are greeted with a snort, then a sneeze directly in your face. Great, you're horse mucus now. You grab the brush and get to work. The horse seems unimpressed. You try humming to it, just to break the silence. It snorts again, softer this time. Maybe you're growing on it. Scholars still argue whether stable hands were better off than castle servants. On one hand, fresh air and time with animals. On the other, kicks to the ribs, freezing winds, and manure, so much manure. You're starting to see both sides. Back inside, you help clean the armor. Polishing mail and plate takes forever, especially when Sir Loudmouth wants his helmet shiny enough to blind a dragon. You buff until your arms fall asleep. Eventually, you're given a crust of bread and a bowl of something warm. You don't ask what it is. You eat it all. The sun is dipping low. The castle bathes in golden light. You steal a moment just one outside the servants' quarters, breathing in the quiet. Then, a voice behind you. Where's the steward's boots? You were meant to clean them an hour ago. You run. Boot polishing is your final task. You scrub the grime off, shine them with spit and cloth, and arrange them just so by the fire. He doesn't even say thank you. By the time you collapse on your bed, every part of you buzzes with exhaustion. You close your eyes. In the dark, you hear a bell again. Distant. Faint. Another day will come. But for now, the worst of this one is over. You made it. Somehow. And you didn't even throw a single chamber pot at anyone. Progress. You wake up to something wet, dripping on your forehead. Not rain. Not a leak. It's condensation from the stone ceiling above you, cold, steady, and incredibly annoying. You shuffle sideways, trying to avoid the drip, but there's no escaping it. Your straw mattress is damp again. You swear it's gotten moldier overnight, and your blanket smells like someone used it to wipe a fish, but there's no time to complain. You're already late. You throw on your tunic, still wrinkled, still slightly burnt at one corner from the fireplace. Incident hand, rush down the servants' corridor. Your stomach grumbles, but breakfast will have to wait. The steward is already barking orders. Today's highlight: laundry. You might think laundry is boring, but in a castle, it's a full contact sport. First, you carry wooden tubs to the well, fill them with ice-cold water, then lug them back to the washroom. Your arms are on fire before you even start scrubbing. Then it's linen, wool, and the Lord's delegates a term you wish you never had to know. You plunge your hands into the sudsy water, made from boiled animal fat and ashes. It stings. Your fingers go numb. You keep scrubbing. Historical fact: medieval laundry was often done with lye soap or even fermented urine called chamber lye, which acted as a bleaching agent. You're silently grateful today's batch just smells like wood smoke and goat. You're halfway through a noblewoman's undergarments when you hear a yell. The Lord's hunting party is returning early. Cue panic. That means bloody clothes, muddy boots, torn cloaks, and at least one ripped sleeve from an unfortunate encounter with a bramblebush or maybe a wild boar. You're reassigned on the spot to emergency boot wipe detail. You rush out to the courtyard, where horses snort and men shout. Mud flies everywhere. You catch a gob of it right on the cheek. Get those boots clean. Now, the steward shouts, as if you were dawdling on purpose. You kneel down in the cold grime and start wiping furiously. One Knight laughs as he grinds more mud into the soles of his boots, keeps the servants busy. He smirks to his friend. You daydream briefly about dumping a bucket of slop over his head, but instead, you smile tightly and nod. Yes, Maybe, someday, once the boots are done, you're tasked with helping the falconer. Yes, the falconer. Apparently, one of the noble's prized birds dropped something unpleasant in the Great Hall, and it's your lucky day. You head to the rookery, where the birds glare at you with unblinking judgment. One screeches when you walk by, as if it knows your soul. You retrieve the mess from the hall floor. It's as horrible as you imagine. You scrub it with vinegar water and a rag that smells like it has seen things. No rag should see. Quirky tidbit. Nobles used falcons not only for hunting but as status symbols. Some even brought them to meals, letting them perch nearby while they dined. You wonder what kind of man eats stew next to a bird of prey with murder eyes. Next comes castle inventory. You're handed a scroll and told to count all the spoons in the kitchen. Easy, right? Except half of them are missing, probably taken to chambers and forgotten, or worse, stuck behind tapestries, used as makeshift tools, or stolen by the kitchen boy to trade for apples again. You spend the next hour searching for spoons like a medieval Sherlock Holmes. One is found in the firewood pile, another in the privy. A third turns up in the chicken coop. By the time you report back, you look like you've been on a month-long quest just to locate silverware. Then there's the noble's son. He's 10 years old, utterly feral, and obsessed with swordplay. Today, he's training, which actually means swinging a wooden sword at anything that moves, including servants. You try to dodge. You fail. Whack right in the knee. You grit your teeth and hobble away. He laughs like a tiny demon. Servant killing score. 3, he shouts proudly. Scholars still argue whether noble children were truly educated in Menazor, or whether most were just allowed to run wild until someone sat them down for Latin lessons. You're convinced this one skipped both. Later, you're asked to help reset the guest rooms. Fresh rushes, warmed bricks for foot warmers, and of course, testing the beds. Not by sleeping in them. No, that would be unthinkable. You sit, press, fluff, and smooth. One bed has a weird lump under the mattress. You lift it and find a dried fish. No explanation. You put it back. Maybe it's a noble superstition. The steward walks in just as you're muttering to yourself, "Talking to the ghosts again," he says dryly. You nod. They're friendlier than the guests. He doesn't laugh, but his mouth twitches. Small victory. By evening, you're back in the kitchen, helping prepare the night supper. It's roast. Something could be rabbit, could be rat. You don't ask. You're slicing onions when the cook drops a bowl. It shatters. She freezes. You freeze. Then you both laugh. She hands you another bowl. "Don't tell anyone," I cried. "Only if you don't tell them, I." Did you whisper back? The supper rush begins. Trays fly. Spoons clatter. Nobles demand more salt. Hotter broth. Less pop. You dance through the madness, balancing bowls and dodging spills. It's chaos, but somehow smoother than usual. After the final course, you help haul scraps to the outer courtyard, where peasants wait for leftovers. You hand out crusts, bones, and the odd turnip. One old man thanks you with a wink. Hard work. Lad, don't let it grind you down. You smile, surprised. It's the kindest thing anyone said to you all day. By nightfall, you crawl back to your damp straw bed, too tired to take off your shoes. The ceiling still drips. You close your eyes anyway. Somewhere, a falcon screeches in the distance. You groan, pull your blanket over your head, and hope to dream of anything but spoons. You wake up feeling like you've been punched by a wagon. Every joint aches. Your back is one solid slab of regret, but the sun's barely risen, and you're already late. Again, today starts in the stables. The horses, bless them, don't care if you've slept. They care that they're hungry. One kicks the stall wall. The second you walk in, another tries to chew your sleeve. You swear one of them is plotting your murder. You shovel muck with a fork that looks like it's been through 3 wars. The smell hits you like a wall sharp, steamy, unforgiving. Your eyes water. You consider holding your breath for the next hour, but unfortunately, you need oxygen to suffer. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval folks believed the smell of horse manure was healthy, good for the lungs, they claimed. You try telling yourself that as you gag into a hay bale. The stable master strolls in. You missed a spot, he says, sipping mead like a man who's never once touched a shovel. You miss a lot of spots on purpose after that. Once the stalls are cleanish, you're told to prepare for a noble outing, a hawking expedition. That means packing food, warming bricks for footrests, brushing cloaks, and somehow attaching tiny leather helmets to birds with knives for faces. You halfway through wrapping a cold roast in linen, when one of the falcons latches onto your glove and refuses to let go. You try, shaking it off gently. It glares at you and tightens its grip. Who's a good, terrifying monster? You mutter through gritted teeth. Eventually, you pry it loose. Your glove has holes. Your soul has scars. Then it's back inside, where the steward is waiting with the worst words possible. Lord Edgar's cousin has arrived. You already know what that means. More boots to polish, more chambers to prepare, and a whole new layer of noble complaints. Lord Edgar's cousin is the type who drinks wine before noon, speaks entirely in sighs, and once complained that the sunlight was too loud. You help unload his luggage. There are 17 trunks. One has nothing but silk gloves. Another, disturbingly, is filled with scented goose feathers. He demands rose water in his washing bowl and refuses to enter the great hall until the rushes have been changed. They feel emotionally dusty, he says, holding a handkerchief to his nose. You nod like this is normal. Historical fact. Aristocrats did indeed travel with their own rushes, perfumes, even personal cooks, especially during longer stays. A noble guest could mean days of upheaval for a castle's entire staff. Once his chamber is fluffed to perfection, you're pulled into kitchen duty. The cook is preparing something delicate for Lord Edgar's cousin. You peek over her shoulder. It looks like mashed fish shaped into a swan, with raisins for eyes. You chop herbs until your fingers are green. One slip, and you almost lose a thumbnail. Careful, the cook says, not looking up. I don't need finger stew today. You appreciate the honesty. The dinner bell rings. You're on serving duty. That means walking slowly, carefully, through rows of nobles while balancing trays heavier than your ambitions. You keep your head down. You don't speak unless spoken to. You smile when they say things like, "Doesn't he have kind eyes?" for a commoner. Or, "I didn't know peasants could walk upright." Lord Edgar's cousin sends back his "too melancholic," he mutters. You're not sure what that means for food, but it means remaking the whole dish. You help clean the mess, while the cook mutters threads under her breath. At least a dog likes it. He licks the plate clean before you can stop him. After dinner, the hall quiets. You finally think the day is over. Wrong. It's music night. That means dragging in harps, flutes, and a lute that's missing 2 strings. You're expected to clap politely, refill goblets, and avoid tripping over the bard's dramatic footwork. One song goes on for 11 verses. You think you black out somewhere around verse 6. Scholars still argue whether medieval music was actually enjoyable or simply tolerated by people who had no. You vote for the latter. At last, the lords and ladies drift to bed. You stay behind, scrubbing goblets, scraping wax off tables, and collecting crumbs large enough to be a meal. You find a chicken bone in a flower vase. You don't ask questions. As you carry dishes to the kitchen, you pass the corridor with the tapestry of St. Hubert. It's a bit frayed. The steward says it's antique. You think it's just old and smells like soup? You stop for a second, lean against the cold stone wall, and close your eyes. Just a moment. That's all you need. Then the bell rings again. One of the guests wants warm milk. You sigh, straighten up, and head back to the hearth. You're a servant in a castle. Sleep is optional. Warm milk for nobles is not. You spill the milk. You're halfway down the corridor, cradling a clay jug like it's royalty itself. When your foot clips a wrinkle in the rush, your ankle twists. The jug wobbles end warm. Sweet milk sprays the floor like a tragic fountain of failure. You freeze. For a second, you think maybe it's salvageable. It isn't. So you limp back to the kitchen, refill the jug, and make the trip against lower this time, clutching it like a newborn. You knock softly on the guest chamber door. No answer. You knock again. Still nothing. Just as you're about to walk away, the door creaks open. The cousin is standing there in a velvet robe, trimmed with actual peacock feathers. His eyes are half-lidded, like he's just been awoken from a dream about himself. Finally, he says, taking the jug, and next time, try cinnamon. You murmur something polite through clenched teeth and shuffle back to the scullery, where someone has already left more pots for you to scrub. You've been awake for, what, 19 hours? The kitchen fire's gone low. You sit near it, not for warmth, but for company. Fire doesn't insult you. Fire doesn't demand milk. Fire just crackles and glows. Quirky tidbit. Medieval kitchens often had a night hearth or a banked fire that never fully went out. Keeping the embers alive meant easier mornings for the cook and a rare spot of comfort for servants stealing a moment to breathe. You finally sneak off to the servants' quarters. It's not a room so much as a long wooden bench near the wall, shared with 3 other tired souls. One of them snores like thunder. The other talks in his sleep. You curl up using a folded apron as a pillow. It smells like onions and failure, but you drift off for 36 minutes. Then the bells ring. Dawn. You consider just ... not getting up, but someone yells your name. You groan and roll off the bench like a sack of potatoes. Today's task. Laundry. You haul baskets down to the river, which is freezing cold and full of judgment. The rocks are slick. The soap is mostly ashes and lye. Your hands go numb by the 3rd tunic. A flock of geese honk at you the whole time. One tries to steal a sock. You fight it off like a knight defending a sacred relic. By the time you drag the wet laundry back, your clothes are soaked, your fingers are red, and you smell like a swamp ghost. The lady of the house is inspecting linens. She lifts a sheet, sniffs it, and frowns. Smells rustic. You blink. Not wrong. She hands it back without a word. Historical fact. Nobles expected their linens washed so frequently that some castles had entire teams of washerwomen. But the soap was harsh, the water was cold, and dry space was limited, especially in winter. No wonder everything smelled rustic. You're sent to help the tailor next. The noble family needs new outfits for the festival. The tailor is twitchy and speaks in needle metaphors. You are the thread, he says. I am the eye. You nod slowly, not sure what that means, and start sorting fabric. You cut, fold, press. You hold up a mirror for fittings. You get poked by pins 5 times in 20 minutes. A servant next to you whispers, "Don't bleed on the velvet. It stains." You don't bleed, not because you're careful, but because your soul has already left your body. The cousin comes in for a final fitting. He spins once in front of the mirror, looks unimpressed, and says, "Does this tunic say power or whimsy?" You consider saying, "It says you own too many birds," but instead you smile and say, "Both, my lord." He nods. Excellent. You escape the tailor's lair just in time for hallway cleaning duty. This involves dusting, sweeping, and fixing crooked tapestries. You spend half an hour trying to get one to hang straight before realizing the wall is tilted, not the fabric. You pass the chapel. It's quiet inside, which is suspicious. Quiet means either something peaceful or something broken. You step in and see the priest asleep on a pew. Snore and you tiptoe out. Then it's meal prep again. You peel vegetables until your hands are raw. You sneak an apple slice and get caught by the steward, who frowns like you've just insulted his lineage. You will eat when your betters are done, he says. Scholarly debate. Some historians argue whether medieval servants were always fed after nobles or just got worse food. Either way, you're not eating swanfish with raisin eyes tonight. The Great Hall is louder than usual. Nobles are drinking, singing, flinging chicken bones over their shoulders. You dodge a drumstick like a trained acrobat. You're cleaning plates before the last course even starts. One has teeth marks in it. You pretend not to notice. You find a child under the table, chewing on a candlestick. He grins at you with waxy teeth. You give him a polite nod and move on. Later, when everything's finally quiet again, you slip outside. The courtyard is dark and empty. The stars are out. It's the only time you feel remotely human. You sit by the well and let the night air numb your bones. Your whole life is service, but at least the sky is free. You wake up to the sound of coughing, not yours, someone else's. Ragged, wet, echoing through the walls like a dying accordion. You sit up on the bench, bones cracking like old wood, and look around. It's barely past midnight. Again, the older maid across from you, Greta, is wheezing into her apron. Her skin's pale, her eyes distant. You offer her water from a wooden cup. She sips, whispers, "Don't worry, it's just the castle air, mold and misery." That sounds ... right. You lie back down and try to count the cracks in the ceiling. You get to 27 before someone's chamber pot spills somewhere nearby. You pretend not to hear it. When morning comes, if you can even call it that chore, sent to clean the armory. Which sounds exciting until you realize it's just dusting rusted halberds, polishing helmets that haven't seen battle since your grandfather's grandfather, and avoiding splinters from the cracked lance rack. Halfway through, the blacksmith storms in, muttering about missing chainmail links. He glares at you like you've stolen them to make jewelry. You haven't, but you wish you had. Maybe you'd have some leverage. He leaves behind the smell of sweat, ash, and molten regret. Historical fact. Castle armories were often tucked in corners of the keep, musty, dark, and dangerously cramped. Many servants were responsible for keeping the weapons presentable, even if they'd never once wielded one. After lunch service, surprise, you Dante get to eat you reordered to escort the noble family S-hounds on their daily constitutional. This is not a walk. This is a stampede. 6 massive dogs on ropes, dragging you like a badly secured wagon across gravel, grass, and at one point through a puddle that absolutely smells like sewage. The cousin watches from a balcony, laughing so hard he spills wine on his embroidered tunic. One of the dogs tries to eat a goose. You lose a shoe. When you return, covered in fur and regret, the steward scolds you for not keeping the animals clean and dignified. You nod, holding back the urge to bark. Quirky tidbit. In some noble households, the dogs had better diets and beds than the servants. There were symbols of prestige, and biting a guest, not a problem unless it was another noble. Back to laundry. Again, this time, you're sorting through clothes that definitely saw something horrifying last night. You don't ask questions. You just soak, scrub, hang. Soak, scrub, hang. Your hands are raw again. You're developing a permanent stoop in the corner of the laundry yard. 2 older maids whisper about a ghost in the West Tower. You pretend not to listen. You do listen. They say it's a former servant, worked to death, still folding bed sheets at night. You chuckle, then realize that's basically your life. Just with more blisters. You're reassigned mid-shift B. 'Cause why not? To help with chamber cleaning, which involves more chamber pots. Always more chamber pots. You wonder if the nobles drink liquids just to make your life harder. One of the pots tips. You step backward and trip on your own foot, landing hard. You lie there for a second, staring at the ceiling, deciding whether or not to cry. But you're too tired for emotions. You just roll over and get back to it. Later, in the hallway, you overhear a tutor lecturing a young lord on Latin. You pause, just for a second, listening. You can't read, not really, but something about the rhythm of the words, it sticks in your head. Service. You murmur under your breath, wiping grime from a windowsill. The young lord hears you and snorts. Even Asculians want to be scholars now, he says. You don't reply. You just keep cleaning, quietly repeating the words. Servus, servum, servum. Scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether castle servants ever had time or access to learned literacy. Some did, particularly those serving clerics or scholars. Others, too many pots, too little parchment. Dinner is loud again. The cousin's friend is visiting a night with more opinions than scars. He insists on telling stories of past battles, all of which sound suspiciously like tavern brawls. You refill his goblet 3 times before he notices you. "Have you ever fought a boar?" he asks. You blink. "No, my lord." He grins. "You're lucky." They bite lower than the waist. He laughs so hard he nearly chokes. You go to fetch more bread. On the way back, you spot the kitchen boy asleep beside the fireplace. He's maybe 10, curled up like a cat, still holding a carrot. You cover him with your extra apron and keep walking. The night passes in a blur of scrubbing, rinsing, listening to nobles argue about who owns what land. You catch a snatch of gossip about someone marrying a cousin to secure a vineyard. You wonder what grapes even taste like. As the hall clears, you sweep under the tables. Bones, bread crusts, 2 buttons, a ring. You pocket the ring without thinking. You'll return it, probably, maybe. Outside, the moon's high. You sneak a moment in the stables, near the warm breath of the horses. They don't judge. They don't speak. One nuzzles your shoulder like it knows you're barely holding it together. You lean against the stall door, eyes heavy, breathing slow, just for a second, just to rest. You're jolted awake by a sound metal striking metal, not in a dramatic, nightly duel kind of way. More like someone dropped a pot, or possibly their sanity. It's still dark, though a sliver of early light peeks in through the stable slats. You've slept maybe... An hour? You peel yourself off the stall door, straw clinging to your hair, and stumble back into the castle like a half-conscious ghost. Back in the servants' quarters. Someone's already stoking the fire. The others glance at you, but no one speaks. You're all too far gone for words. You head to the washroom, not for hygiene. What luxury but to splash some water on your face and check that your eyes haven tea turned permanently hollow. There, you hear the bell. Breakfast service. Of course, you run. Inside the great hall, the nobles are already gathered, loudly arguing about falconry and the politics of marriage, like they didn't tease sleeping goose-feathered beds. While you curled up next to a bucket, you pour wine. Not yours. You'll never taste it. You serve sausages, fish paste, and something that smells suspiciously like pickled cabbage. You try not to breathe through your nose. The steward snaps his fingers and points at a stain on the tablecloth. You nod, wipe it, nod again. Historical fact. In large noble households, servants were expected to be invisible, seen but not heard, quick, quiet, and clean even if the job involved things no one wanted to acknowledge actually happened in a refined castle. You're sent to the solar nexta room that should feel peaceful, with its tall windows and tapestries, but instead feels like a trap. The lady of the house wants help with her embroidery frame, which you don't touch, obviously. You hold the threads, keep the dog from chewing the wool, and listen to her complain about the dry winter air. You try not to laugh. Your fingers are cracking from the cold, and she's upset. Her silks are statiki. She sighs heavily. You're so lucky. You know, she says. No worries about marrying the wrong man, or too many parties. You blink. Yes, lucky you. She asks for tea. You fetch it. Then she asks for almond biscuits. You fetch those, too. Then she remembers she doesn't actually like almonds. Quirky tidbit. Nobles sometimes imported strange and exotic treats or months. Cinnamon, sugar just to show off. But servants were often punished for preparing food. The noble changed their mind about 5 seconds later. After lunch, you're assigned to the laundry yard again. It's snowing lightly now. Your hands go numb before you can even wring out the first tunic. You hum under your breath to stay awake. A lullaby your mother used to sing. Or maybe you made it up. It's all kind of a blur now. The older washerwoman beside you hums along without looking up. You both keep scrubbing. The wind howls a little, and a few flakes catch in your lashes. Later, you catch a glimpse of the youngest Medellinar trying to read by candlelight. She hides the scrap of parchment as you pass. You give her a nod. She nods back. That's enough. She'll be someone someday, Maybe not you, but maybe her. You clean the stairwells next. It's endless. Step after step after step, mopping, wiping, sweeping. Someone passes you, probably the tutor, again complains that it's still dusty. You want to ask him if he's aware of gravity. You don't. Scholarly debate. Some argue servants could advance in noble house, eventually managing the kitchen, the stables, or even becoming chamberlains. Others believe upward movement was rare, with most servants staying in their place, unless they left or died. As evening falls, the wind picks up. The walls groan like they're tired of holding the place together. You're told to stay late in the scullery again. Dishes are court. There are always more dishes. You wonder if they breed in the dark. You scrub until your knuckles bleed. The girl beside you hums something familiar. You hum back. Eventually, the hall quiets. The fire dims. The last candle gutters. You make your way back to the quarters, stepping over a puddle you don't question. Your body aches in places you forgot had bones. Every movement is like dragging a stone cart through mud. You collapse on the bench, the same one as last night and the night before. You pull your thin blanket over your shoulders, curl up, and stare at the wall. There's a crack there. You've counted it before. 37 jagged edges. Someone coughs again. You close your eyes, and somehow sleep finds you. Just a little, just enough. You dream of butter. Not gold, not freedom, not love. Butter. Thick and yellow, and smeared across. Warm bread you don't have to serve to someone else. And just as your dream self takes a bite, you're dragged back to waking life by something far less delicious. Your name being barked. The steward's voice, sharp and phlegmy, cuts through your brief peace like a cold blade. You're up again. You'd think your legs would rebel by now, but they obey like whipped dogs. And you shuffle to the kitchen with the energy of a soggy broom. You're assigned to haul sacks of flour to the larder. Flour, because it's half sawdust. Thanks to the rationing, you heave it over your back, knees trembling like a newborn lamb. You sneeze halfway up the stairs and get a slap on the shoulder for losing precious powder. You mumble an apology you don't mean and trudge on. In the corridor, the cook whispers that the Baroness niece has taken a vow of silence until her birthday feast next week, which means everyone around her has to guess what she wants. With hand gestures, you're assigned to her room. Of course, she points to a picture, then to her mouth, then to the ceiling. You bring her wine. She shakes her head, pouts, points again. You bring her milk. She glares, stomps her foot, and claps once. You try cider? She claps again, and you're tempted to pour it over your own head and pretend it was an accident. Historical fact. Noble women in some periods were trained in symbolic communication for courtly intrigue and flirtation. This led to some incredibly annoying silent games among bored noble daughters, while servants had to interpret their every gesture like charades with consequences. You head out, but the steward catches you. There's a problem with the latrines. Of course there is. You're sent to investigate. You take a torch and your last shred of dignity, both of which are in danger of going out. Down in the dark corridors beneath the castle, the stone walls weep moisture. The floor is slick with. You don't want to know. You follow the stench, and there it is. A blocked chamber pot in the nobleman's guest quarters. Apparently, someone had too much venison and too few vegetables. You clean it. You don't gag anymore. You're past that quirky tidbit. Chamber pots often had witty poems or tiny faces painted inside some mocking enemies. Others meant to bless the throne, because, apparently, even nobles needed entertainment while relieving themselves. You finish the job and nearly collapse, but then you hear shouting. The tutor's arguing with the steward about who took the Baron's best ink. It's imported and expensive. They both turn to you. You're holding a candle, not ink. Doesn't matter. You're told to stand in the hall and not move for 2 hours. As punishment, you do. You memorize every knot in the wooden paneling. You name one of them Gerald. Scholarly debate. Some records suggest punishments for servants were corrective. like withheld rations or cleaning extra chambers. Others hint at abusive extremes, locked in pantries, chained to cellar walls. Historians still argue whether this was common or anecdotal. Eventually, you're released. You go straight to the kitchen to help prep for supper, because no one remembered your punishment didn't count as an excuse. You gut fish. So many fish. They stare at you. You stare back. You win. Sort of. The youngest kitchen boy vomits from the smell. You pat his back with a hand that still reeks of something far worse. You mop the floor. Again, you load firewood. Again, you polish the banister. Again, and finally hours later, you're given a spare heel of bread. It's hard as a brick, but you eat it like it's the last meal before your execution. You crawl to the quarters. Someone's stolen your spot. It doesn't matter. The floor is the same anywhere. You lie down, arms folded across your chest like a statue in a forgotten tomb. Your bones creak, your eyes flutter. And for a moment, just a moment, there's silence. No bells, no screams, no chores, only the soft wind outside, humming through the shutters. You think of butter again and let yourself drift. You wake to the sound of soft crying, not dramatic sobs, just that quiet, sniffly weeping that creeps under your skin like a chilled draft. It's the new girl. She's barely 12, skin bruised from bumping into furniture she's not used to. This is her third night in the castle. You've lost track of how many you've had. You don't say anything. Words don't really help here. Instead, you pass her half of your bread heel. It's stale, and might have once been stepped on. But she takes it like it's a gift from the gods. You roll over, knowing you'll regret the hunger later. You're right. You do. Because today is linen day, the washing of all the noble sheets, garments, and castle linen isn't soft cotton or scented silks. No, it's thick wool, scratchy flax, and the occasional blood-stained tunic from a noble's bad hunting day. You haul bundles to the washroom near the river. It's barely dawn, and your hands go numb the moment they touch the water. You scrub, and scrub, and scrub. You start to wonder if you're scrubbing a hole through time itself. Historical fact. In medieval Europe, laundry was often done by servants or women near streams. Using harsh lye soap and washing, bats' flat paddles used to beat the fabric clean. The job was cold, exhausting, and likely to leave permanent joint pain. Once your fingers go from frozen to pruny, you return to the drying courtyard. You wring out sheets and hang them over splintering wooden frames that always snag your sleeves. The wind picks up and carries a pair of underpants across the yard like a fleeing ghost. You chase it. Of course you do. You nearly catch it. Right before it lands at the feet of the Baroness, she stares at it. Then walks away in a huff, as if you personally delivered the breezy humiliation. You trudge back to your duties. Midday brings a sudden changeur, reassigned to the Great Hall. Banquet preparation. Oh joy! The Baron is entertaining a hunting party from the north, and these men can drink and eat their weight in pork and pastry. And you get to serve them, which means dodging groping hands, spilled ale, and crumbs the size of dice. One knight insists on calling you Gertie, no matter how many times you say that's not your name. He laughs each time like it's the first time. You smile with dead eyes. Quirky tidbit. Some castle guests would travel with their own comfort servants, people they expected local staff to accommodate, feed, and sometimes bathe. Imagine working a 16-hour day and then being told you now also need to warm someone else's socks by the fire. The feast is noisy, messy, loud. Someone drops a roast goose. You're blamed. Of course. You and given a whipping, this time just cold glares and a sharply worded speech about your general incompetence, which somehow makes you feel worse. You clean in silence. The floor is sticky with spilled mead. You slip. You don't fall. Victory. Debatable. Later, the jester performs. He's not funny, but he's loud, which the nobles seem to confuse for humor. He trips deliberately and flings a pie. It hits the steward, Everyone laughs. The steward doesn't. He turns, sees you, points, and just like that, you're cleaning pie from a tapestry that probably predates your grandparents. It smells like spoiled cream and shame. Scholarly debate. There's long been argument over how often castle servants were replaced or rotated. Some historians believe high turnover due to exhaustion and punishment was the norm. Others argue that loyalty and long service were rewarded with better conditions or, at least, slightly less awful ones. The hall finally empties. Your knees ache. Your hands are raw. The dishes pile higher than your will to live. You clean them all. Because someone has to. Because it's always someone like you. By the time you finish, it's night again. You curl under a scratchy blanket. Your stomach growls. Your feet throb. You can still smell the pie. But outside, the wind howls low like a wolf, moaning in its sleep. Somewhere, an owl. You imagine you're that owl, not majestic or powerful, just awake, watching the night, and not expected to polish anything. And somehow, that makes sleep come easier. You're jolted awake by bells. Not gentle bells. Harsh, clanging, someone might be dead bells. Your body screams to stay still, but your job doesn't care about your soreness, or dreams, or humanity. You scramble into your clothes, still damp from yesterday's wash, and follow the other bleary-eyed servants to the courtyard. Turns out it's a drill. A fire drill. Because last week, a careless candle set the West Wing's drapery ablaze. And now the steward is pretending to care about preparedness. You stand in the cold, half dreaming with your eyes open as a knight jokingly accuses you of starting fires with your laziness. Hilarious. You're assigned to the scullery today, which means lucky you it's time to clean the chamber pots. You have two options. Carry them out to the dumping trench, or toss the contents from the second-story windows. With a shout of "Guardy," you choose the trench. Barely. Historical fact. In many medieval castles, human waste was dumped into cesspits, moats, or trenches. While some castles had rudimentary plumbing, many servants had to haul waste manually, exposing themselves to disease and harsh conditions. The trench is half frozen and smells like the devil's breath. Every time you tip a pot, you gag, not just from the stench, but from how close you are to losing your grip and tumbling in. You don't fall. Victory, maybe. Afterwards, you're sent to the candle room. Hundreds of tallow candles to trim and mold. The room is warm, which feels like a blessing, until you realize it smells of animal fat and smoke. Your fingers get greasy fast. You press wicks into thick, yellow wax while your stomach churns. Someone sneezes into a vat. No one cares. You wonder if that sneeze will end up lighting the Baron's chamber later. Poetic justice? Maybe. Midway through the afternoon, you're pulled away to polish the Lord's armor. Not wear it, not try it on for fun. Just polish it. It weighs more than you expected. Every dent is a story you're not allowed to ask about. There's dried blood in the grooves of the chest plate, probably from the last battle, or possibly a friendly tournament. The Lord doesn't distinguish between the two. Quirky tidbit. Polishing armor was a real and exhausting task. It required ash, vinegar, and constant elbow grease. The tiniest bit of rust could ruin a knight's appearance or, worse, compromise their protection in battle. You accidentally cut your finger on a pauldron edge. It bleeds, but there are no bandages left. You wrap it in a rag and keep working, because stopping isn't really an option. Just before dusk, a messenger arrives. Dusty, tired, frantic. He delivers news the Lord doesn't like. You hear shouting from behind the closed great hall doors. Then, silence. Then, the castle must prepare for possible siege, which means fewer rations, tighter security, longer hours, more chores. Your blood runs cold not from fear, but from imagining what your day will look like under siege. The steward calls a meeting, says something about discipline, says something else about dignity. You hear punishment and order and then tune out. Your eyes drift to the torches lighting the courtyard. The flames sway in the breeze like they're dancing to some sad tune only fire knows. Scholarly debate. Some historians argue that lower servants during times of siege were treated marginally better since their survival was essential to running the castle. Others argue they were the first to be sacrificed, blamed, or forgotten. Once panic set in, there's no consensus, only grave uncertainty. After the meeting, you're handed a list. It's long, everything needs reinforcing. Windows, storerooms, weapon racks, even the chickens. You don't know how to fortify chickens. You spend an hour hammering planks to the inside of a door that already barely shuts. Then you haul sacks of dry peas to the upper pantry. Then you scrub the chapel floor. Because apparently, dirt weakens morale. You're about ready to collapse when the steward calls for torch inspection. Torch inspection. You pretend not to cry. They don't notice. Or maybe they do and just don't care. Night falls hard. You finally slink back to your corner of the servants' quarters. The new girl's asleep, mouth open, a faint smile on her face. You wonder what she's dreaming about. You hope it has a place with soft beds and hot food and windows that open to fresh air. You lie down. The smell of tallow lingers in your hair. Your muscles throb. But outside, the moon's full. The clouds drift slow and sleepy across its face. And for the first time in a while, you let yourself imagine not escape. Not freedom, but just a few days without pain. It's a foolish thought, but you keep it anyway. You wake up to whispers, not the good kind like gossip or sickness, but the cold, clipped kind that say something's wrong. A guard's gone missing. You're told this casually, as if misplacing an armed man is just part of castle life. Maybe it is. No one seems too alarmed. But you notice people moving faster, glancing over their shoulders more often. A thick, tense hush settles over the halls, like the castle itself is holding its breath. You're assigned to the laundry quarters today. Your thrilled sarcasm included. It's below ground, near the dampest part of the keep, where moss grows on stone and the air smells of mildew and defeat. You're handed a stack of linen soaked in things you'd rather not identify, along with a paddle and a warning. Watch out for rats. They like the soap. Sure enough, halfway through scrubbing, a fat one waddles past your foot like he owns the place. You flinch. He does not. Historical fact. Laundry work in castles was brutal. Water had to be fetched by hand. Fires stoked to heat it. And harsh lye soap used to remove stains and odors. The job was typically reserved for the lowest-ranking servants or punishment detail. As you scrub, you listen. Servants talk while they work. And today the gossip is rich. Someone swears they saw a ghost in the stables last night. Someone else says, the steward is embezzling bread. You read, mostly ignoring them until you hear the kitchen boy whisper, they found blood on the north wall. That's new. You file it away in your mental folder, labeled terrible things I can't do anything about. By midday, you're up top again, fetching firewood. The wind is sharp, slicing across your cheeks like it resents your warmth. You trudge to the woodpile and find it low, very low. The cold is winning. And guess who gets to chop more logs? Yep, you. You grab the dullest axe known to mankind and start swinging. The wood fights back. It splinters wrong. It bounces instead of cracking. After 20 minutes, your hands are blistered and your shoulders scream louder than the cook during dinner rush. Quirky tidbit. Some castles had designated woodmen, whose only job was splitting and stacking firewood in actual full-time role. Because that's how bad heating efficiency was. Servants had to double as laborers if numbers were short. By the time you drag the wood indoors, the cook is already furious. Apparently, someone forgot to soak the lentils. You don't know what lentils are supposed to feel like, but she throws one at your forehead for emphasis. Message received. Dinner is chaos. You ladle stew into bowls, while guests complain about temperature, seasoning, and the color of their napkins. A knight spills wine and laughs like it's a joke. The whole room is in on. You laugh too. It's safer. One of the squires trips and drops a platter. The noise echoes off the stone and your spine freezes up. The steward's eyes lock on the poor kid, and for a moment, you're sure he'll be dragged away. But instead he gets a lecture. You're not sure which would be worse. After dinner, you're assigned to serve mulled wine in the great hall. You hold the heavy jug steady, pour without spilling, and keep your head down. You've learned that eye contact is dangerous. It leads to questions, requests, or worse, familiarity. A nobleman stops you, drunk and slurring. "You," he says, poking your chest with a gloved finger. "Ever kissed a lady?" You blink. He laughs like it's the funniest thing in the world and moves on. You keep pouring. Eventually, the room grows quiet. The nobles drift to their beds. The fire dims. You're finally dismissed. But you don't head to your straw mattress. Not yet. You take a moment, just a moment for yourself. You sneak up to the tower. You're not supposed to be there, but you've learned to pick the lock with a bent spoon. The stairs are cold under your bare feet. The wind louder the higher you climb. When you reach the top, the view hits you like a soft blow to the chest. The stars tonight are enormous. The moon's a sliver, thin as a smile. The forest below looks like a sea of ink, stretching forever. You breathe. Not deeply. You can't afford that luxury. But enough scholarly debate. Some researchers believe that certain castle servants, especially those close to tower work or maintenance, use moments like these to mentally survive their roles. There's little written evidence, but hints in letters and journals suggest private rituals helped maintain sanity. A moment later, the door creaks. You freeze. But it's the stable girl. She's been here before. She doesn't speak, just nods and sits beside you. You both look out in silence. The wind whispers through the arrow slits. You sit there until your eyelids droop. Your head tilts forward and your shoulder brushes hers. She doesn't move away. You don't apologize. The night holds you both. For once, nothing needs fixing. You're awake before the sun. Again, your eyes are crusted, your body sore, and your mouth tastes like sleeping fireplace ash. But there's no time to stretch, or groan, or yawn. The castle is already alive, creaking and groaning like some ancient beast that needs feeding. You shuffle out of bed and back into yesterday's tunic. It still smells like stew and sweat and singed wool. Perfect. Your first task, clean the chamber pots. The nobles, bless them, somehow produce more waste than food consumed. Some of the pots are still warm. One is suspiciously heavy. You hold it out in front of you like it might explode, and when you finally dump them all into the muck cart, you gag. The smell is nuclear. You wonder, briefly, what your life might have been if you'd been born a few miles north, or south, or into a family that didn't owe taxes. But nope, you're here. And today, you've got bucket duty. Fact. In castles without modern plumbing, servants were responsible for emptying garderobes and chamber pots daily. Failure to do so could literally make people sick. Contamination and cholera outbreaks were common. You're halfway back from dumping when you're pulled aside. The steward wants to see you. You freeze. You never want the steward to want anything. But you nod, heart pounding. He stands near the main hall, arms folded. His eyes scan you like you a beetle he is. Not sure whether to squash or ignore. You're taking over flag maintenance, he says. That's on goats. New. You blink. You ask, because the last boy climbed the tower drunk and fell. You're next. Fantastic. So you spend the next hour climbing the highest peak of the castle with a bundle of fabric under your arm, and wind slapping your face like an angry ant. The flag is stiff with frost. The rope bites your fingers. You tie the knot too fast and nearly drop the whole thing. But you don't. You pause for one long breath before climbing down. A falcon screams nearby. It's oddly motivating. You survive. Quirky tidbit. Some castles flew multiple flags, not just for identity, but to communicate things like war, death in the family, or high-profile visitors. Raising the wrong flag could literally start a political incident. Back inside, it's baking time. Yes, you're also the bread person now. The baker's got the flu or food poisoning. No one's sure. You need dough like it insulted your mother. Your arms ache. Your knuckles pop. The oven, a giant beast built into the wall, is already hot. You slide the loaves in using a wooden paddle the size of a coffin lid. Minutes pass. Then, a smell. A bad smell. Burning. You open the oven. The bread is black. You panic. Someone will notice. You take the ruined loaves and tuck them beneath fresh ones. Is it smart? No. Is it desperate? Yes. Will it work? You pray to 5 saints you don't believe in. Then comes afternoon. You're scrubbing floors near the chapel when you overhear a visitor arguing with the priest. Something about relics, bones, a missing finger. Historians still argue whether relics, allegedly bones or objects from saints, were actually real or simply powerful tools of religious control. Many castles claim to own one, though almost none were verified. You move away from the conversation. You're too tired for spiritual politics. You'd just like one clean corner of stone to lean your forehead against 4 or 5 minutes. Evening comes. You help prepare the hall for a feast. Again. Always feasts. It's like the nobles don't digest, they just refill. The stable girl is there. She bumps your shoulder when she doesn't smile. Doesn't have to. You carry plates. You dodge elbows. You pour wine until your wrist locks. Then the jester arrives. He's terrible. His jokes don't land. His teeth are weirdly sharp. You suspect he might be martyrdom, but the nobles laugh anyway. Wine helps you manage to sneak a heel of bread. It's warm. It feels like a miracle. Later, in the shadows of the pantry, you share it with a stable girl. Neither of you talks. There's no need. You've learned to speak in looks, sighs, the way someone holds their shoulders. You say goodnight with a glance. You return to the servants' quarters. It's dark. The straw smells the same. You lie down, your body buzzing in that weird, exhausted, not quite sleeping way. And as your mind drifts, you wonder, how long have you been here? Weeks, months, a lifetime. Your name is soft now, faded like ink on a worn letter. Your dreams come in candlelight and whetstone. Your muscles twitch with echoes of chores. And still, something in you breathes. You're alive. You're surviving. And as you slip into that half-conscious state, where the fire crackles low, and your breath slows, and your limbs finally go still, you know this. You'll wake up tomorrow, you'll do it all again, and you'll be just fine. Maybe not happy, but fine. And that, somehow, is enough. Wind down. Let's just pause here. Let the weight of all that castle stone melt away. You've done enough, haven't you? Enough scrubbing and carrying and pretending to know what nobles want. No more standing on cold stone. No more dodging spoiled wine or wrestling burnt bread. Just stillness now. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing get slower. You're safe now. Picture a soft room with thick blankets, candlelight flickering, and the gentle sound of rain just beyond the window. You're not a servant anymore. You're not anything, just a soul, floating somewhere warm and quiet. No one's calling your name. No one's watching you work. You're allowed to rest. Stay here as long as you need. Drift a little deeper, and as you do, just know, you made it. You're free. You're home. End of script. Sweet dreams.